Hey Molly, I'm taking a look at your presentation. Okay, so let's see. The intro where you're describing the ancestor seems to be fine. This one's a little out of focus, so I don't know if you stretched it too much. Whenever you give a quote, it's a good idea for you to read it because otherwise your audience is going to be reading this while you're talking instead of listening to what you're saying. So be careful with things like that. You've got a lot of themes here, themes I would say, and elements. They're not just themes, like low lighting is not a theme, it's an element. So make sure you talk about those things and give examples of like how and why they are Gothic. So a little more about that on that slide. And then you're missing the validate the influence section. So it's like, here's all this, that's that describe the ancestor, and then you need to validate the influence. So how, did Mary Shelley read Gothic work that came before hers? How was she exposed to it? Do you have any information like that? So if you can find that, that's what you want to put in there. And make sure everything that you say in your narration is written out here in the notes section with your citations of where you got that information. It's extremely important. And then here you have dark settings, and I have no, but there's no audio and there's nothing written, and so I don't, unless it's be hiding, nope. So I am not sure what you're saying about dark settings. Then you go to extreme landscapes, and then here there's no title, so I don't even know what it's supposed to be until I listen to it. So one of the things I'm going to say is organization. Make sure it's organized in a way, both on the slides and through your narration, that your audience can follow what it is that you're saying. So make sure that you have a validation and then an introduction to some of the Gothic elements and themes running through Frankenstein, or there are many Gothic elements and themes running through Frankenstein. One of them is dark settings. So introduce the slide that way, and that way we know that what's coming are going to also then be all these other Gothic elements and themes. And then you need to be talking about those. Oh wait, here it is. Haha, I don't know why I didn't see it. Okay, so I must have missed that one. So when you're talking about it, I'm going to play the beginning of it. I totally missed it.
There are numerous dark settings.
Okay, so you just start with the dark settings. Now, as I've gone through the other ones, you identify the elements or themes that are Gothic in the novel, but you don't analyze them. And that's actually the same issue that almost all the other students are having, is that they're identifying them, but they're not analyzing them. And that's the how and why did Mary Shelley use them. So make sure that you go back through the instructions. Also go back through, there's a ton of resources under Learning Materials, Ancestor Project. There's videos, there's things, there's a sample. If you're going to look at the sample, make sure you download it so you can listen to it, you can see the notes section and all of that. Also, I posted a video in the announcements that talks about the issues that students tend to run into as they're going through the drafting process of this project. And this is one of them, how to do the analysis, that, you're like in the first step. There seems to be like 3 steps in the analysis, really. And one is the making the connection. The next one is explaining that connection, like how they work together. And then the last step, which is the biggest step, which is the most analytical part of it, is the how and why does she use it? Especially the why. Why is she including these Gothic elements? What does it do for the novel? Why would she be putting these things in there? So that's one thing. And then so to kind of go back, make sure that your slides have some consistency. If you're going to talk about dark settings, you're going to have this at the top. Maybe do the same thing for the next one, because now you've got extreme landscapes. But they're on the side, and if you want to have it on the side, that's fine, but still have up here like extreme landscapes. Then put North Pole Mountains, Dark Lake, instead of having it written out in sentence form, where here you just have it as a heading. And if you're going to do this also, I would put it like that. And the same here, you have no heading at all, so I don't even know what it is until you start giving it to us. So I would keep this consistent. Be careful, this purple is different than this purple. So I don't know if this is, it looks like it is still, because it's all part of the, of the same background. And then here you've got death and decay. See, this is what I'm talking about. Something like this for this one. And madness you have listed, which is great. And then I listened to this, so you've got this quote, and then but this is what it says.
At the end of the novel, as Victor lays dying in front of his creation, the creature states, "I shall quit your vessel on..."
Okay, so the quote that you give is not the quote that's on here, and so it's confusing as an audience member. And also, Victor doesn't lay dying in front of the creature. Victor's dead by the time the creature gets to the boat. So he never gets to have any closure. He never gets to speak to Victor. He is just there with Victor's corpse. Again, here, I wouldn't put it this way with this whole image. I would make that image smaller. I would keep it consistent either with one of these sidebars or this top bar. And actually, because you only use this top bar once, you might want to make it more consistent every other time you're going to use the top bar. I don't know, some consistency in the way that you're using your slides is going to make your presentation even stronger. And I know that sounds like I'm giving you some really picky notes, but that's because I think you've got a really great presentation, and so I think it can be even better, and I'm just trying to give you some ideas of how to do that. Also be careful with these where you've got the whole slide as an image, because it's different than the rest of it. Like this one here kind of throws me off too. I think you're better off keeping it with at least, some purple frame of some kind. It just seems to sort of like take a step out of where you are in your presentation, like, what we're used to seeing as an audience member. Again, keep it consistent with things like that. And then this ending, I have some issues with the images. They're almost too, I don't know, because they're so kind of cartoony. Because the ones you're choosing here, even though this is an image of the creature from the film, which I don't really like people using in this particular project, it's, you're using some really interesting ones where, he's looking at, like this is the burning, actually this is the burning of the windmill, but from the ending of the first one and beginning of the second one, I'm talking about the films, but this is sort of an interesting image of the creature, so I'm okay with that. This one too is a very different, looking at the madness. I think it's a great choice for an image. And then here we don't, that could very well be Victor. We don't know if that's Victor, if it's kind of hard to tell. It's probably the creature, but that's great. So the fact that you've chosen these sort of non-traditional looking ones, I'm totally okay with this image. It's a little more modern, but it's still fine. I'm not sure about this image here. This one, sure. But I would definitely rework this one. And this really throws me off because you've never had this color background before, or a title like this. I would keep it consistent. And make sure that this is in MLA format, because that is APA format. Okay, and where are you getting the Edinburgh Magazine and Literary Miscellany? And when are you using it? Because well, the reason why I ask is because I actually have studied the 1818 reviews, so I know them all quite well. And I'm wondering where you have it in your in here. I'm not, is that, okay, so I know I gave you how to cite the book somewhere, so make sure you're citing that properly. I'm not sure what this is. EBSCOhost is never going to be what you're going to use as a between medical humanities and Gothic studies. Okay, so this looks like it's a an article, and so make sure that you're citing that properly in MLA. You have Gothic novels and social history, and also Castle. Okay, but then you have quotation marks here. I'm not sure. So this, make sure you clean all that up. It's a little confusing. It looks like your sources are fine as far as sources go, but just make sure that your MLA is correct. It's not even, and if you, because you're doing an APA and it's not even correct APA, so make sure, I don't know, I'm going to, just make sure that it's right. So overall, this is what I'm going to say. A lot of what I'm telling you to do is visual consistency. Some of what I'm telling you to do is organization, as far as helping your audience follow along with what you're telling us and why you're telling us, and all of that sort of thing, like you would if you were writing a paper. And then make sure that you have the analysis is complete, and that you have your validator slide in there somewhere, and that those transitions between the different parts of this project make sense. You're going to talk about it. So first you can talk about Gothicism, and then you'll say Mary Shelley was exposed to Gothicism, such and such and such and such and such. And then Gothic elements and themes are prevalent in her novel Frankenstein. One of them is, and then that's where you're going to kind of start your identification, identify and analyze the connections. Okay, if you have questions about anything I put in this probably really way too long video, make sure you ask me. I'll be happy to help you out with anything. Also, don't forget to watch the video I posted in the announcements that kind of goes over some of this stuff. Use whatever materials are in Learning Materials Ancestor project. And if you need anything else, let me know. If you want me to look at another version of this, like another draft, then make an appointment to come see me. You have a very strong first draft. You have identified so many Gothic elements in Frankenstein. You may have identified too many. I don't, what I mean by that is, like, you're making a lot of work for yourself because you've identified so many. If you don't mind writing the analysis for all of those, great. If you want to cut a couple of them out because you're like, hey, this is making the project way too long and I don't have time for that, I'm okay with that too. So if there are maybe one or two of those elements or themes that you think are not as strong as some of the other ones, or not as important as some of the other ones, then you could always take those out. Or keep them all in and have, a super impressive project. I don't care. That's up to you. But I'm not going to take off points if you took out a couple of those elements, because you do have a lot that you identified. So you have a lot to analyze and talk about. Okay. So let me know what I can do to help.